Welcome. This is Conscious Action for Truth, the CAT in Cat Chats, where we will focus on the issues facing New Mexico in these unprecedented times. We will expose the infection apocalypse, the injection apocalypse, the election apocalypse, and more. This is the time when every lie will be revealed, and in the end, the truth will win. Buckle up, hold on to your hats, and listen to the courageous voices of truth in New Mexico. I am your host, Mahara. Welcome back again, Kathleen, to Cat Chats. I am so looking forward to our conversation today, which is going to be about jurisdiction and what that means. The law of the land, the law of the sea. They're two very different beasts. One is definitely a beast, and one is our friend. So, Kathleen, let's just get right into it. Let's start with, what does jurisdiction, the word, mean?
Okay, so jurisdiction is it's a big word that we have to unpack. And in and of itself, jurisdiction is about standing. It's about who we are. It's about what we embody, what we embrace. And that's in a very loose terminology of it. But
when you say standing, just to be clear, does that mean like where we stand, how we stand, what we stand on?
Yes, you
like
could say all of those things. For example, as sovereign men and sovereign women, we stand on the land. We are talking about the law of the land. We're talking about natural law. We're talking about God's law. We're talking about our sovereignty, that we're born sovereign, and our entire life is based upon our sovereignty, and it's between ourselves and our Creator, that we are born free. That's a fundamentally crucial point that everyone needs to embrace fully, because from the beginning of time, the master-slave system has been foisted upon those who are unaware of the fact that they're born free and unaware that they can claim that jurisdiction of sovereignty. So I put it into context. You're either a slave in a master-slave system, and that jurisdiction controls your entire life, or you claim your freedom, you claim your sovereignty, you claim yourself as a free and sovereign man or woman, and that is the jurisdiction you hold through infinity. So those are the two options that we find ourselves faced with.
So we have been hugely bamboozled for hundreds, thousands of years, basically, right? Well, what I understand is that when we're not standing in our sovereignty and the jurisdiction of the land, of standing on the land, we're in the land of the sea, which is known as admiralty law, right? Which is the law of the courts and the bar in this system that we find ourselves mostly entrapped in. We think we are.
That's right. I wouldn't call it the land of the sea, but I would say...
Oh, I meant the law of the sea. Did I say the land of the sea? I meant the law of the sea.
That's okay. That's okay. The language is so tricky. And that's the part that is so important for people to understand because it's all English, right? And so there is a very intentional, very deceptive use of the English language to trick us into the jurisdiction of maritime law, admiralty law, they're the same thing, or contract law. Again, those three different definitions all define the same basic kind of law that is known as the legal system. That legal system has been foisted upon us over the last numbers of hundreds of years. And the Bar Association, the British accredited registry, is the accreditation registry, are the attorneys who have developed this legal system of state statutes and codes and policies and presumptions that they have in voluminous amounts. I mean, we're talking, I think it was from 1979 to 1986, 100,000 new state statutes were put onto the books. You can imagine the impression that a law firm has if they have all the state statutes. Now, in contrast to that, I want to point out the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. And this, for every sovereign man and every sovereign woman, which includes our sovereign rights, as noted in the Bill of Rights that are secured in the Constitution, are what give us our jurisdiction to stand and express ourselves as sovereign men and women. So we do have this very devious system or jurisdiction of legalese, of admiralty law, of contract law on the one side. And now as we become much more educated and aware, we realize that we have our own jurisdiction that we can claim through the Bill of Rights, and they're constitutionally secured in the Constitution. And we expose that, we express that, we hold to that all the time. It's crucial. And there's certain wording, Mahara, that we must always be aware of to use. Do you have a question or a statement?
Well, no, keep going. What is the wording? So the language, as you say, is so important.
Well, it really is. So I found myself, as we've talked about in the past, in some lawsuits in the courts. You don't really want to ever find yourself in the court system, because the court system is totally rigged, right? Because as we know, even though the New Mexico court's mission statement is to uphold the Constitution, the national Constitution and the Constitution of New Mexico State, they do everything but, because they are also listed on Dun and Bradstreet and they are doing business for profit. So I hold their feet to the fire, because I point out that their mission statement is to uphold the Constitution. That means their mission is to uphold my constitutionally secured rights. So when I am in court, every time I am before the judge, or every time I send in a document, for example, my document comes now by special appearance. And in this case, petitioner, alleged defendant, Kathleen A. Dudley, Sui Juris. Now, it's really crucial. Most people—
Pro se, that's the usual, right? Pro se.
And pro se, and the court will say, yes, you're pro se. In fact, they jam it down your throat. They want you to be pro se, because all the state statutes and all the policies and all the rules embrace pro se, and they can rule upon you because it is in admiralty law. Sui juris means standing alone. There is no one over you. You are actually considered a delinquent in the court's eyes even in pro se, and of course, definitely with an attorney, because you are considered essentially an idiot. You are considered without any rights. Your attorney represents you. So as sui juris is crucial, people, and there's a very fine article by the Gastons on sui juris, and they take you through the entire system of what it is like to deal with the courts. And I will send that to you so you can put that in this article, in this interview.
Is that on a website that we can link to?
Yes, it is.
Good.
And
Okay.
they've written an entire book, and you can access the book, but it explains the importance of claiming sui juris. So pro se, you're in the trap. You're in admiralty law. You've contracted with them. You've given up your rights. Forget it. So it is always sui juris, and you must claim that. And then the wording goes on to say, Kathleen Dudley, sui juris, who has challenged the jurisdiction presumed, in this case, by the 4th Judicial District Court, as explained herein below, and who respectfully demands, in this case, I'm demanding a change of venue to a constitutionally compliant court overseen by judges who uphold their oaths and the duties mandated upon them by the Article 6, clauses 2 and 3 of the National Constitution. Now, this has been an ongoing series of documents filed with the courts. So that's not how you would start your initial one, but you would by claiming that you are sui juris and you're challenging the jurisdiction of this court. Crucial words, because if you don't make those statements, it is assumed by your silence that you are accepting the jurisdiction that this admiralty court is presenting to you. And the other aspect of it is everything you must rebut, everything that they say that is against you, against your sovereignty, you must rebut. Silence, acquiescence, again, means that we are contracting, and they deviously contract with us. So that wording is very, very important. And every time we sign a document, it is always all rights reserved, sui juris. That always holds us in our jurisdiction. So we need to get into the habit of understanding that everything that we write, everything that we say has more potent meaning than we ever realized possible.
So Kathleen, I know you didn't voluntarily kind of jump into this study of law, right? It's not your favorite subject in the world. You are in boot camp essentially, battling in a court case. So my question is, and I totally get it, and I agree with everything you're saying. And my question always is, they don't care. They don't care about you standing up as sui juris. To them, they have power over you. So how does it work practically? What's happening? If you can say anything about what's happening in your case, or how you feel, what's actually happening for you in this standing sui juris?
Well, actually, no one has power over me. I am sovereign. No one has power over me. We only give up our power. We have to claim our empowerment. We have to claim our sovereignty. And that is the trick, because everyone wants to ensure us that we have no power. But it's far from the truth. So the interesting thing is we've talked about admiralty law and contract law and law of the sea and maritime law. This is a master-slave system. It is deceitfully set up to trick us, to pull us into their jurisdiction. So with as many statutes and as many policies and as many rules that there are, it is overwhelming, and we think, wow, I can't do this. I must hire an attorney. And as soon as you hire an attorney, you've sold yourself further down the river than you ever could have dreamt, because the bar attorney is a part of the creation of this master-slave system, and the judges are attorneys, and they all pay one another, and they are all doing business for profit. So as long as we are fooled into thinking that we have no power, we will have no power. Now, it's very interesting. There's a state statute, and it's Miranda versus Arizona. It's 384 US 436 491, and it was 1966. And it says, where rights secured by the Constitution are involved, that means our secured constitutional rights, including the Bill of Rights, there can be no rulemaking or legislation which would abrogate them. In other words, what that means is any state statute that is in conflict with the Constitution, which holds our Bill of Rights that secure our sovereignty, then they are null and void. Now, it's very simple. They have no power over us. When we claim their statutes that have been ruled upon, and we claim those statutes in a court case, they can't touch us. The two jurisdictions are like parallel tracks of a railroad track. The only thing that gets in the way is us stepping out of the ring and allowing them to win, or letting them trick us and we fall into their jurisdiction. It's that simple. There's nothing more, there's nothing complicated about it. But they would like us to think that with their hundreds and hundreds of thousands of state statutes and case laws and policies and presumptions that are dizzying and overwhelming, that somehow holds some kind of trick that can sidestep us. And it can, if we don't stay focused. All we have to do is stay focused and uphold our jurisdiction, our rights that are secured in the Constitution. It's that simple, but it takes a tremendous amount of tenacity, a tremendous amount of temerity to rebut every falseness that they state, every attack. They will want to attempt to criminalize us, which has been what they've constantly been doing. You'll notice they'll use ad hominem attacks. They'll attack our character until we look like we're the ones that should be behind bars instead of the ones who are behind bars that we're trying to claim some reprieve from. But they'll turn it upon us. But they want to continue to trick. And so we must stay focused. It's very simple, but it does take time. And it takes truly understanding that we're free. You know,
it's the difference between legal, when we say, well, that's legal or illegal, that is when we are in the trap of admiralty or maritime law. Or we say that is lawful. Lawful is it akin to natural law as well as our Constitution? Is our Constitution based in natural law, would you say?
Well, what our Constitution holds within it, the Bill of Rights. And those Bill of Rights, those amendments that I'm constantly claiming. So the First Amendment, my right to free speech, my right to claim that I am sui juris. I've had to repeat this ad nauseum in my documents to the court because the attorney is attempting constantly to trick me. And I want to say hello, Jesus, because he might be watching this one again. You know, he's been taking quotes and using our quotes from our interviews. And I you know, it's like, wow, that's pretty cool. Maybe we're teaching him something. What do you think, Mahara?
Yeah, Jesus, the bar attorney that, yes.
Yes. So yes, we we have, I lost track. Bring me back on track, Mara.
We're talking about difference between legal and lawful.
Yes.
And, you know, the Constitution being based in the Bill of Rights. And is that connected to natural law? Is my
Yes. And so what we're talking about is our sovereignty, and that we're born free, and those rights that were put into the Articles of Confederation, and that were added into this revision to the Articles of Confederation by a very few delegates. And it was really an unlawful modification that happened when they created the Constitution. But one of the mandates was that the Bill of Rights was a part of that Constitution. And that's what we claim. So the free speech, and so to claim myself as sui juris, and no one can decide who I am. They can't tell me what I can put on my body, what I can put in my body, what I say. That's the First Amendment, right? So if I'm claiming myself sui juris, no one else can tell me that, no, you must be pro se, let alone a bar attorney or a judge or an ex-bar attorney who was who I had hired and then fired. None of them have jurisdiction over me. None of them do. I claim my jurisdiction as a sovereign woman, declaring and claiming the Bill of Rights and my constitutionally secured rights. It's that simple. We always go back to that premise. That's the standing. I stand in my sovereignty. My jurisdiction I claim as my sovereign rights, and they're secured in the Constitution. And so we must always go back to that. And yes, so the Constitution is natural law, it's God's law, but most importantly, it's the Bill of Rights. And the difference, go ahead.
I have a question about a lot of people I've talked to are now talking about correcting their status and becoming an American national. How does that fit in to this? There are definitely parallels, and I'm wondering whether you've looked into it and what you feel about that.
Well, I'm actually a state national. I was introduced to that a few years ago, and I thought, knowing nothing about it, I think I need to do this. But the thing is, Mahara, what only matters is if we step into our sovereignty. We don't need a piece of paper to step into our sovereignty. We need the self-confidence, we need the self-respect to stand in our sovereignty, because we were born sovereign. Doesn't matter how many pieces of paper we have, or if we have the correct passport, or we've gone through this incredibly complex series of documents and we have them all correct. But are we empowered? Maybe we hire someone to do all those documents, but are we empowered? Maybe we have a land patent, but are we empowered when the sheriff comes or when the tax collector comes? Do we know what to say? Do we actually know what our sovereign rights are? So yes, state national, the national perspective, or the
American national,
or the state national. It's a way of introducing ourselves to our sovereignty. But the most important thing is, are we acting as sovereign people? Do we actually know what that means? Or are we using a piece of paper to say, well, I'm not Kathleen Dudley in capital letters. I'm Kathleen Dudley in, lowercase letters, but I'm not Kathleen Dudley according to this paperwork. So we can't trick our own selves into thinking that this paperwork is going to protect us, or this paperwork is going to make us sovereign. It's our actions that are going to make us sovereign. And I know Margie and Jack Flynn had shared with me that someone who had gone through that whole process was then in a position where they were challenged, and they had all their documents, but their documents didn't work. So that's why I bring this point up.
So
it's not paperwork.
Yeah, in a way, getting more documents is still falling into the trap.
Exactly.
That's what I'm seeing. And I love what you say, because ultimately it's the truth, and that's what we have to stand in. What I'm getting is, we are in a spiritual war at this time. There is no doubt. And it's good against evil. And I know, a number of years ago, I would never have believed I would say something like this, because the adversary, the Satan, the enemy, whatever you want to call it, likes to tell everyone there's no such thing as good and evil. That's what's being put out, and no such thing as good and evil. But that is a lie. So everything that you've described about the legal system, to me, is a description of the enemy. It's a description of how Satan works, with lies and confusion and complication. The truth doesn't need defending. The truth from our Creator stands by itself and is simple. Well, that's what we have to step into. And what I'm seeing, that is our natural jurisdiction. It's who we are.
Exactly. And if you think about it, law is not taught in school. It's not necessary in so many ways, because a child understands what is lawful. A child understands what is right and what is wrong. And that's one of the reasons why the Constitution is so darn small and simple, because natural law, God's law, is very simple. There are really two infringements that almost anyone in the origins of natural law understood. If you infringe upon someone and you verbally attack them, or if you come and you physically attack and steal, now they're unlawful, right? Those are unlawful actions. In the case here, I was verbally attacked by a neighbor, and he began damaging property and stealing. So that was the first affront. And then secondly, in the second case, because there are two cases before the courts, someone was attempting to steal my rights on my property by by declaring that they are going to have a prescriptive easement, which would take away much of the value of my land. Well, those are unlawful actions. Those are affronts against me. Everyone would say, oh, well, that's not right. And so we understand from a lawful perspective what law is. But then the bar attorneys come in and they put in this whole legal system of statutes and structures to take away our rights. It's about thievery and thuggery. It's about
words we don't understand.
And words that we don't understand. And so, admiralty law, law of the sea, dead at sea. If you think about words that are used and the conniving part of it, where do we get corporations? Corpse, dead. Where do we get mortgage? Mort, that's dead, right? So there's all this language that is used that is about dead. And if you think of the word debt, it sounds very much like dead, debt, and so admiralty law is about death. It's very dark. It's very occult meaning hidden. And if you look at what is happening, there's a lot of satanic ritualistic behavior in the courts. What does the judge wear? A black robe. It's not green or pink. It's black. And they come in and, it's all ceremonially ritualistic. And that is to instill fear. That's to instill fear. And
subconsciously, for sure. Yeah.
Well, yes, and so we have to understand that this is theater, because that's what they're doing. They're actors, and it's all theatrical. And today, of course, because they actually have, because they're listed on Dun and Bradstreet, and they're doing business as, for profit. They're actually not courts of justice. So they're actually violating their own mission statement, and so they're actors. They're not truly judges of justice. They're actors, and they're creating profit. And so this, we call them out. We stand in our jurisdiction and we say, you have no authority over me. And I continue to claim that I'm on this side of the railroad track and you're on that side, and we're parallel. I have as much authority to claim my sovereign rights as any other sovereign individual, and you have no jurisdiction, no authority over me. And there are many statutes that give me that assurity, that assurance that I can claim that. For example, Miranda versus Arizona, which I read. And then, of course, they're always going to want to criminalize us. They want to penalize us. They want to make money off of us. And so there's another really fine statute, and it's Miller versus the US. And it says the claim and exercise of a constitutional right. So if I claim my First Amendment or my Fourth Amendment, which is about being secure in my property, and no one can take that from me. If I'm claiming that, then I can also say, Miller versus US, here's your state statute that you're so fond of claiming over me, but this time it is in support of my constitutionally secured rights. And it says the claim and exercise of a constitutional right cannot be converted into a crime. So by me claiming my property rights, they can't attempt to turn that into a crime. Or by me claiming my First Amendment rights to free speech. For example, they've been attempting to claim that I am a criminal for speaking the words that were in the flyer that you and I talked about. There's nothing to criminalize when we're speaking the truth, when we're speaking facts. But this court, this attorney, has been attempting to turn what I have said into a crime. So we have actual state statutes that have been upheld by the courts that we can say, look, even in the legal system, there are statutes that support my constitutionally secured rights. And when we use that, that's very empowering, because we're using their own statutes that secure our constitutionally secured Bill of Rights.
It always feels good when we can use their weapons against them. The
Yes.
times when we can turn what they've had trained on us for centuries, turn it around and let it backfire on them. That's good.
Well, and it's so important that people understand that if we do not claim our jurisdiction, if we don't stand in our sovereignly empowered position, we will continue to lose. We will become more enslaved by the moment. That's what we're seeing today. People who are acquiescing, because these miscreants who have continued to enslave people for thousands of years are basing it upon their money, their power, their thuggery. And yet we would not be here today having this amazing opportunity to have this conversation, Mahara, if those behind us, if our ancestors hadn't stood up and fought. And so here we are today. We're at there's going to be an epiphany.
We're doing it again. This flag behind me is from from the original revolution, one of the first flags made.
Yes, and it's beautiful.
And this is we're in it again. It's a different kind of war. It's an information war. But we have to stand up and get back to our roots of like, this is so important. Whether we're in court or not, it doesn't matter. It's about claiming who we are and remembering who we are. We've gotten lost in the weeds so badly.
We have, and we have to use the language correctly. Because if we don't, we will be tricked into maritime law. We will be tricked into contract law. And we will be tricked into contracting with them. Even though a contract must have two people, two parties who understand that they're contracting, but they still will force you to contract even though it's trickery. And unless you expose that, and unless you stand in your own jurisdiction, you will be pulled into their jurisdiction and you will be penalized. You will pay heavily financially, but that's all these courts are about. That's all these attorneys are about, is about money. It's a for-profit system. We hold our feet to the fire because there's this inversion where they're saying, you know, our mission statement is to uphold the Constitution and the justice for the people, but over here, they're doing business for profit. So we use that, we expose them, and we hold to our rights. And if everyone was to claim that, if everyone was to do that, we would turn this upside down and back into our natural law, which is so simple and so beautiful and respectful. And, you know, the bar attorneys have truly, I mean, they're in a cult. It's a satanic cult. And it's very serious. And I don't know if they actually even understand it as well as we do. But
may not. Many of them may not. I'm sure the higher ups do, but many of them don't.
Yeah.
And I think we're going to have to leave it at that today. We've already gone over what we thought we were going to do, but it was a juicy conversation. And I think we may need to continue at some point. And especially as you are in it and you are navigating through this so bravely and with such tenacity. I do applaud you, Kathleen, for what you're doing and what you're learning. And I know you're going to be able to help many other people.
Well, Mahara, it's, you know, we either roll out the red carpet and become their slave, or we empower ourselves and we hold on to our own rights. And that's what we all are doing. And it's the only thing I know to do. So thank you for the opportunity, always.
You're so welcome.